We're halfway into 2024, so it's the perfect time to look at what we've created so far and where to go from here. I have way too many sketchbooks, or at least it sure looks like it. Honestly, I love having different formats and paper types so that I can use a variety of art supplies, and each sketchbook has a specific goal. Let's start this sketchbook tour showing where each sketchbook started and especially what I drew this year, and see if my art evolved at all. My main sketchbook is this large, square format one by Hahnemuhle, and the very first spread here has its own dedicated starting a sketchbook video because I was so excited about it. I'd felt constrained by having only small sizes, and this sketchbook is all for developing my art ideas and painting concepts instead of just practicing or doodling. I remember writing down the goal of improving my art style, or rather finding my art style, and we'll see how that goes. I started using the Blackwing matte pencil because it works so well on this paper, and I also experimented with various black colored pencils to get a full value range. Some of these pages are love letters to just drawing and shading and cross-hatching, while others are a bit messier or focused on layout thumbnail sketches. A lot of these sketches are preparations for paintings on canvas, panel or paper. I also fell in love with gold embellishments this year, and you can see them pop up everywhere in this sketchbook too. There are some layout sketches for art scene ideas in here as well. I like thinking on paper, especially when I get client work that's a bit more complex, so those find a place in here too. The large format leaves room for both those tiny sketches, my personal notes, and then explorations at larger sizes right next to those. And I feel like it's helped me a lot in staying focused when it comes to developing art ideas. I have room and freedom for this to be a workbook, an art journal, and a place to play around in. Colored pencils are a very 2024 medium for me, as I really love having some warm and cool tones when sketching. I love this final spread here. On the left is a sketch for Gumiho portrait, a nine-tailed fox, combining my love for dark fantasy and Korean mythology. On the right are portrait studies and some sketches for my Dracula art scene that I'm working on, and overall all these different projects seem to become more unified in art style. An inconsistent art style was always my weakness, so seeing this makes me feel more optimistic about that. If there's one typical sketchbook in my collection, this one is it. I feel every artist should have a space all about developing their own ideas, with no pressure for every page to look pretty or even be legible to anyone else, but still with room for more elaborate sketching, because that occasional, beautiful, elaborate sketch can make us feel more in love with our sketchbooks, and the more care we put into them, the more we can get out of them in return. The large Hahnemuhle sketchbook was a replacement for this small sketchbook here. It's just a little booklet in which I was sketching thumbnails, but also did value studies or quick movie scene sketches. A bit random, a bit more unfocused than the new Hahnemuhle sketchbook I have now. While I love some of the shading studies in here, the paper is very thin and doesn't survive multiple pencil layers or especially any kind of erasing, which is why I couldn't wait to switch to a more sturdy, satisfying sketchbook. Harder pencils can tear it up like this. What I liked doing in this were these terracotta colored sketches with my all-time favorite sketching pencil by Derwent. Those colored pencils are so soft that I can layer them even on this very flimsy paper. There are also my very first tries with oil pastels in here that I just rediscovered while filming this. For 2024, you can see some early thumbnail sketches here that then showed up again in my large Hahnemuhle sketchbook, where I could draw them in more detail. For the final page, I used that soft Derwent drawing colored pencil and a Luminance colored pencil in black to sketch this study of a favorite painting of mine, to bring this sketchbook to a satisfying end. This layering of colored pencils in limited color palettes will be a theme that shows up in my other sketchbooks too. If you've followed my channel for a while, this is the sketchbook that started it all, with a master study for my very first video last year. I have a terrible habit of doodling on old sketchbook pages, so there are small colored pencil tests here from a recent trip to Seoul, despite this sketchbook being quite old. As an A5 sketchbook with a sturdy cardboard back, this is one I often carry around. So while I'd always wanted this to be my art study sketchbook, I don't stop myself from drawing whatever my heart desires. That might mean some stylistic whiplash, from travel sketches like architecture scenes to color swatches, master copies, and random art material experiments. In 2024, the colored pencils came into play. I'd focused on black and white sketches for so long that I really needed more practice with color. I started with just a few portrait shades by Prismacolor and slowly added to my collection, sketching in cafes and studying at home. The ring binding of this one is large and a bit annoying, so some sketches are upside down. And then I try to use that for some post drawings too. This is where I started using very limited colored pencils combined with value studies, and just generally wanted to be more deliberate and intentional with my compositions and color contrasts. Here I was testing rainbow pencils on top of regular colored pencils for more uncontrollable, vibrant shades, and I want to try that again on a proper drawing. In a recent sketching video, I went back over some basic Loomis method portraits, which was really helpful, honestly. Sometimes reviewing things you learned a long time ago can be an amazing refresher. This is where I am at now. I hope you can see how, in a way, all of these sketchbooks started at very different points, but ended up in a similar place. Warm and cool color studies, more controlled values, and a focus on moody, dark fantasy portraits, which is really what I most love to paint. I noticed while filming the sketchbook tour that all of these went through phases, and I think my drawing skills actually did improve a bit over the last half year. The grey and terracotta color sketches are something I want to continue for sure. This tiny sketchbook here is also by Hahnemuhle and made its first appearance during a travel sketch vlog. But there are no landscapes in here, just studies I wanted to draw while resting at cafes or airports. I missed having a small sketchbook that fits even in the smallest bag for sketching on the go ever since I finished a portrait-focused sketchbook last year. And this is an evolution of that. I'm sketching value studies, so this is a practice sketchbook. But to make it fun, I'm focusing on movie scenes. Here, 2 colored pencils in various grey hues have gotten involved, and I love this scene from Arashi, the Handmaiden, especially. Now, enough pencils and shading. It's time for watercolor, gouache, and acrylics. I've had these Arches travel edition sketchbooks for years, but with not much opportunity for travel during most of those years, I filled them with more movie scenes, still life studies, and local views. Again, I have the bad habit of going back into old sketchbooks and painting over old pages. For some of these, I layered gesso over abandoned watercolor sketches and then used acrylics on top. This is the hot pressed paper by Arches, and I really like this for mixed media rather than pure watercolors, where I prefer rougher paper textures. In 2024, I tried to bring this sketchbook back to its roots with some travel sketches in watercolor and gouache. And because it's so small, I can't wait to bring it with me for some future urban sketching too. The smooth paper also means pen drawings work really well, so I love this for urban sketching in particular. The second Arches sketchbook is the larger version with cold pressed paper. I used this for cute small watercolor illustrations, animals, later some fan art, and then you can see how over the years my interests transitioned into more complex scenes and one day realistic shading and fantasy art. It's not that I didn't like my cuter watercolor art, and to this day I paint small illustrations for local cafes and shops, but I felt stagnant and wanted to challenge myself, following my passion for fantasy and sci-fi books and films, as well as character art, portraiture and mythology, and integrate all of those into my personal art. There's definitely some stuff I still want to work on, like this landscape scene here that I started sketching while hiking, and want to paint over in gouache soon. In 2024, this sketchbook too came with me on my travel sketching tour of Seoul, where I tried out watercolors and gouache paint combinations. I really want to improve my observation skills when drawing from life. So also in Seoul, I sketched this spread of 8 scenes at cafes, bookshops, palaces, parks and galleries, focusing more on gouache and trying to go for realism over beautiful shading. This is something I need much more practice with, for sure. Luckily, there are still many more pages to be filled, so I hope we'll get somewhere with that. The cold press paper makes for more beautiful watercolor blends, but it feels more flimsy than the hot press paper and warps quite a lot. Now there are still a couple more sketchbooks. While flipping through my watercolor sketchbooks, you could spot those stray oil pastel drawings, and at some point I got myself dedicated paper for those, so my sketchbooks aren't too messy. Mixing media in sketchbooks and being messy and chaotic can be wonderful, but some media do just feel better on dedicated surfaces. So I have paper pads for oil pastels and my newest addition, this marker paper pad. I'd mostly used this small oil pastel pad for some experiments and then finally got a larger A4 format for more detailed sketches. Here I experimented with using linseed oil and a brush for blending to get smoother transitions. And here I did the opposite, focusing on individual pastel strokes, creating textures and impasto effects. This is why I like having these sketches in a separate space. The paper comes with coated pages to separate each oil pastel sketch, and the paper feels so much better to smudge around on with pastels. When I filmed my starting a new sketchbook video earlier this year, I'd written down some of my art goals, finding a more cohesive art style and identity, but also improving my portrait and figure drawings. Looking back, I think I am on the right track, practicing a variety of techniques but all leading in the same direction, while still leaving room to experiment and just have fun. By the way, I really want to do the 100 heads challenge, but you can see my dilemma. I love drawing out different media, and some of my portraits are more scene illustrations than anything else, so I honestly wouldn't know where to even begin counting. I don't want to start another portrait-only sketchbook, as that feels too limiting, but just for fun, here's a counter for 2024 so far. Do you have a favorite sketchbook from among these? Which one would you like to see in future sketchbook session videos? And how is your own sketchbook journey going this year? I'd love to hear about your sketchbooks, if you have a favorite brand or paper type, and what your personal go-to art materials are. For me, this year is all about colored pencils, apparently, though I'm excited to share more of my oil pastel and gouache paint sketches soon. One bonus sketchbook I want to mention, this cheap paper pad, in which I keep actual written notes about art. Tips from YouTube tutorials or art books or lessons just stick in my head so much easier if I actually write them down. I also keep notes on using different art programs in here, as I've been teaching myself more 3D modeling this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my future art videos.